Charles has finally done it. He has stripped Prince Andrew of all his titles. In fact, he's no longer Prince Andrew. He is simply now Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. This is huge and it's been called seismic, and it is. This has never happened in modern royal history within the British royal family, and it completely and utterly resets the board, especially for Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, who are probably getting the biggest scare of their lives right now in Montecito, because they were very much thinking, much like Andrew has been, that their titles are secure, that nothing will happen, that they are just able to go on doing what they're doing without consequences. As it turns out, there are consequences. King Charles has enacted them, and he has changed the future of the monarchy, and it is a good start. But I don't think his work will be finished until he includes Harry and Meghan in those plans as well. So we are going to get into all this huge breaking news today. But if you guys haven't been to Royal News Network before, my name is Brittany. I do provide compelling royal commentary, so please hit that subscribe button. I would absolutely love to have you back. So this news definitely 150% took me off guard. There had not been rumblings of this. There had been talks of things going through Parliament, some discussions, some questions about Andrew's lease. But at the same time, Charles had drug his feet. In fact, I had a video today that I very briefly made live, and I was like, oh, no. I just need to make it for members because it was going to go live at 5 p.m. today. And it was titled King Charles's Make It or Break It Moment. How he deals with Andrew and then also with Harry and Meghan will determine the future of his reign. And as it turns out, I was a couple hours too late. I should have had it go live when I was finished, because this news has completely and utterly changed everything. And this, number one, guys, is a fantastic move for Charles to make. And he has done it in a way that protects Beatrice and Eugenie, which I think is absolutely correct. And they are also keeping a lookout on Andrew's mental health, which they should be doing. This is a huge fall from grace. But I want to be clear as well, is that this is entirely Andrew self-inflicted. If he had a bit of sense of self-discipline and a bit of self-control, he would not be in this mess right now. I can guarantee you that he would not be in this mess. This is a result of a series of catastrophically stupid decisions by Prince Andrew over the years that is resulting in this catastrophe for him. But let's go ahead and look at, just so we can all be on the same page here, the actual official statement from Buckingham Palace, because there's some interesting little tidbits in here. And so this is a official communique that went out at 7 p.m. British time, which is currently right now actually 4 p.m. U.S. time. And it says, His Majesty has today initiated a formal process to remove the style, titles, and honors of Prince Andrew. Prince Andrew will now be known as Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. And it doesn't say this, but this change is in effect immediately. His lease on Royal Lodge has, to date, provided him with legal protection to continue in residence. Formal notice has now been served to surrender the lease, and he will move to alternative private accommodation. These censures are deemed necessary, notwithstanding the fact that he continues to deny the allegations against him. Their Majesties wish to make clear that their thoughts and utmost sympathies have been and will remain with the victims and survivors of any and all forms of abuse. So does this necessarily mean that King Charles and Queen Camilla believe everything from Virginia Giuffre? No. But what this does tell us is that because of all the intense pressure and scrutiny on Andrew, this is crippling Charles's reign right now. And he has to act decisively to sort of head off the worst. And this is what he has done. And I think it is absolutely the appropriate move to make, because we've talked about this a lot with Harry and Meghan. Of course, it applies to Andrew as well. You don't need these distractions within your reign. In fact, in the video that I technically got done and uploaded briefly and took down, I talked about how Charles's historic visit to the Vatican was completely overshadowed by Andrew and all the scandals surrounding him. And again, this is all Andrew self-inflicted. Nobody told Andrew to have a relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. Nobody told Andrew to maybe have a relationship with Virginia Giuffre. Those were Andrew's decisions. And unfortunately, this is a result of years and years and years. It started with the reign of Queen Elizabeth, of unchecked acting by a royal. Andrew thought he was untouchable. And so he acted as if he was untouchable. He went and he got money from people he shouldn't have gotten money from. He went out and did things he should not have done. He hung out with questionable people, did questionable things. And I feel like this is a natural consequence of that. And I think that's important to be clear. This is a natural consequence of a lot of catastrophically bad decisions. And it affects Sarah as well. And she has definitely fueled some of that. Sarah's excess has resulted in her own ruin. And of course, now she cannot use the title Duchess of York at all. Obviously, neither can Andrew. And I always thought that Andrew would keep his prince title because he was born a prince. But Charles is making it clear here. And this, I think, is such the critical message to get from all this is that Charles is making it clear who is part of the institution of the monarchy and who is not. And what I've described is a lot of brand damage to the monarchy because you have rogue royals. Now, particularly, it's Harry and Meghan because they're the most sort of egregious actors constantly. They're constantly churning things. And so, this whole notion that somebody could go unchecked for so long is sort of a bad thing. You need to be able to identify the people who are dragging down and damaging your brand, which is exactly what's happened here. Andrew is dragging down the whole brand of the monarchy, the whole institution of the monarchy through his actions. And Charles just had to say enough was enough. So if you don't know, Andrew is apparently going to move to a property on Sandringham. That's up in Norfolk. That's where Catherine and William had their home, Amner Hall. It will be privately provided by Charles, and Charles will maintain his brother for the rest of his life. And this is just to avoid Andrew having further, let's say, financial issues. And this means that Andrew going to nefarious people to try to raise money, which is sort of how him and Sarah got wrapped up in Jeffrey Epstein in the first place. So some people will still be upset about that, but what else is Charles supposed to do? Is he supposed to throw his brother out on the street? I don't think that's what his mother would like. So I feel like Charles, in stripping Andrew of his titles, knowing that would probably devastate his mother, is still honoring her by making sure he doesn't put his brother out on the street. And I feel in some ways that it's unfortunate that it got this far because Andrew should have been reined in the 1990s. If they had done it then, if Queen Elizabeth had held her son to account then, we would not have this mess now. It started 30 plus years ago. And as a result, Charles is dealing with it. And I just think in that instance, it's very unfortunate that this will, I think, sort of damage the legacy of Her Majesty's reign. This will 100%, her dealings with Andrew will damage, I think, how people look back on Queen Elizabeth and her time on the throne because this sort of got out of control. And there are a lot of people looking for blood with Andrew. I've called it a witch hunt when I did the Crown Report recently, and I still feel like that's a very much that fervor is there. And Virginia Giuffre's family, I won't have time to find the quote, but it was just a moment where I was actually on Dan Wooten's live stream. So if you guys have not watched that, you should go and do that. So I popped on with him real quick, talked about how she was basically a poor American girl and she managed to take down a prince. Well, that's sort of the wrong way to look at this because this was a situation. It sort of had tentacles everywhere. Everybody had their angle here. And Virginia has been both proven true and false in particular situations. So, how much of her testimony regarding Andrew is true, we don't know. We will never know. And we will never know because she died earlier this year. Jeffrey Epstein is dead. And so I feel like so much of the angst over Jeffrey Epstein, which is, I think, overblown in the first place, is sort of all falling on Andrew because he's the only one basically left standing. Ghislaine Maxwell is in prison, yes, but Andrew's the only guy left standing. And so they are going to try to destroy him to the best of their abilities. When I was on Dan's live stream, he has said that people are obviously keeping very close watch on Andrew, trying to protect him from maybe potentially harming himself in this melee. So I will say, I think it is prudent to not attack, obviously, his peripheral family members and accept that this is the route that has been taken. But to criticize Charles here a bit. And again, I went through this in my previous video. If you remember, you will watch it. But one of the big things I've noticed about Charles so far is that he seems more reactionary than proactive. So he announced 2 weeks ago that Andrew would no longer use his stylings as the Duke of York. And now, 2 weeks later, we finally get the no, 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 everything's gone. Charles is making a move through Parliament. And I feel like that's because Charles was like, oh, this wasn't far enough. So now I have to do more. Again, it's reactionary, noticing the churn within Parliament, within the Republican movement, and everything that he just keeps having to go further and further and further when he maybe should have just taken this step as soon as he became king, to be quite honest. And you leave yourself open to, I think, a lot of pressure from various people when you're reactionary rather than being more proactive in the situation. Because really, the big issue I think Charles and perhaps the rest of the royals had with any sort of parliamentary investigation into Prince Andrew is that it would inevitably bleed into everybody else, and everybody else, even for the most minute, let's say maybe having one offshore account or something like that, everybody would get wrapped up in the melee and would really become a witch hunt for everyone. So Charles had to make this move to sort of be able to silence some of the critics saying that he didn't do enough. I mean, what else can he do? People calling for criminal charges. You have to have evidence to have criminal charges, people. And Andrew can't question his accuser. So this is all pointless. So, in terms of a criminal aspect to this, we don't have evidence. Until there's evidence, you can't go any further than that. So, this was exactly the right move. However, since Charles, again, is more reactionary than proactive, my big question is, what about Harry and Meghan? Because I made the case and it remains true. Andrew and Sarah are an echo of what Harry and Meghan will be in 30 years if they stay married. I mean, Andrew and Sarah aren't even married. But you have this issue that sort of grows over times. And as things get more and more desperate, Harry and Meghan, I've always argued, will get more and more incendiary or exaggerate more to get more press attention regarding everything going on with the royals. Harry and Meghan will always be a liability. And Charles here in this instance has to make, you could say, probably the ultimate sacrifice, which is potentially his relationship with his son. But his relationship with his son, at the heart of hearts, should not hinge on whether or not Harry has a royal title. But I think that's what it will come down to. But Charles has to, I think, enact greater change to sort of protect everyone, because Harry and Meghan are a huge liability. You just have to look at that recent World Series baseball game where Harry and Meghan attended. I went through and I saw a lot of posts from Canadians, from Canadian news outlets that were ticked beyond all get out that the son of the king was sitting in a baseball game representing the LA Dodgers instead of the Toronto Blue Jays. And I think that's completely and utterly appropriate, because the problem with Harry and Meghan, I was going to do a whole video on this, but it's going to be wrapped up here. Harry and Meghan have made the incredibly, incredibly stupid decision to constantly cite their royal connections and yet not think that anything they do reflects on that institution, or that people look at them and think of that institution and have a particular reaction to it. Smart people would have warned, even if they were in the owner's box of the LA Dodgers, they would have said, hey, you know what? We're representing Toronto here. We met in Toronto, or we had a date in Toronto. Meghan used to have a Toronto's Blue Jay hat. Doesn't anymore, doesn't care, because their LA Dodgers hats look brand new, because they're all set dressing, really. Because nobody else really in the box was wearing the hats, just Harry and Meghan, because, they have to represent when they could have just gone there and not worn hats at all. That was always an option for them as well. But because everything about them is a publicity stunt and attention for the sake of attention, they damage Charles's reign as a result. They damage the monarchy as an institution, because they just seem like they use their titles very, very liberally without consequences. And it's exactly what happened with Andrew. Andrew had no consequences, and it gets to the point where it's threatening an entire reign. Charles's future, the entire monarchy's future, is sort of hinging around how to deal with rogue royals. And Charles didn't make the decision soon enough, and so it had to be forced from him. Same with Andrew. Andrew should have made it soon enough. Obviously, William played a huge role within this as well. But what I also find very interesting is that what Harry and Meghan have always thought, and I think especially Meghan, is that she was untouchable. You can't touch her royal title. There's nothing you can do about it. She has it and it'll never, ever go away. And even I see her fans going, oh, there's nothing that can be done with the title. She'll have those titles forever. Well, I guess that's proven not to be true, is it? You can take away all those titles. You can also take away the places in the line of succession, which I think needs to be exactly the thing that is done. This has, I'm sure, shaken Harry and Meghan to their cores. And I think especially Meghan, well, maybe more Harry in some ways, because they truly believed nothing would ever happen with the titles. They could do whatever they want, and the titles would not be impacted at all. But they've now seen that, oh, it just takes talking to like a justice minister or something. I don't get quite all the UK things. Again, watch Stan's live stream because he kind of goes over it. But Harry and Meghan sort of thought, well, nothing can happen. This is set in stone. As Charles has proved, it only takes really one person to make this happen. And Charles figured out a way to make it happen. When there's a will, there's a way. So anybody saying, well, William can't do anything about Harry and Meghan when he's king, no. Charles is breaking the mold here. Because here's the thing. Once you break the mold or, break the glass ceiling or whatever analogy you have, once you change the pattern, everything changes as a result from it. So Harry and Meghan, because there had been really no changes to titles in several decades, you maybe have to go to the early 1900s to see a title being stripped through Parliament. But when it comes to the modern royal family, there's just nothing really that comes to mind at all in this instance. And so Harry and Meghan are just going along thinking, we can do whatever we want. It's going to be fine. What can they do? As it turns out, a lot. And Meghan Markle and Harry's, their entire existence at this point revolves around, we are the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. So you should buy our crap. You should watch our stuff. You should basically just follow us for whatever because we are the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. But when Charles shatters that, when he goes, no, as it turns out, I can change the rules and take back the titles, everything changes. Everything literally changes on its head completely. And Harry and Meghan, I'm sure, are in their mansion right now, furiously contacting Buckingham Palace and basically anybody they can get a hold of and probably asking, are we next? And I would actually offer that you should watch Harry and Meghan here now very closely and see if there's at all a change in behavior after this. Because again, Harry and Meghan thought they were untouchable. But now they found out that no, the worst can happen to them if Charles decides it. And I don't think either one of them ever considered that to be a possibility, that they could go that far, that the monarchy could make this ultimate choice, one that they firmly, I'm sure, despise and hate because all they have are being the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, and that's it. They have nothing else. And for their future business prospects, they need more, and they just simply don't have it. And as they consider what the future is, Charles needs to very much consider doing the same to Harry and Meghan. They are just going to be Andrew and Sarah once again in 30 years. You have to say, hey, when you leave the royal family. And when you leave like Harry and Meghan, basically shattering the store on the way out, starting a fire, throwing Molotov cocktails at the institution of the monarchy, making salacious allegations that are unfounded broadly against the monarchy and the institution, and damaging and distracting from the reign. Because like Andrew and his obviously situation with Virginia Giuffre and everything overshadowing King Charles's tour of the Vatican, Harry and Meghan will do the same against Charles, Catherine, and William. I mean, they've done that countless times. And Harry and Meghan will still be an issue, but it'll be much better when Charles goes, hey, they're just Harry and Meghan Mountbatten Windsor. Or really, they should be Harry Mountbatten Windsor and Meghan Markle. Because technically, my knowledge has always been only blood royals can have the last name Mountbatten Windsor. And the reason for that is that it sort of denotes you as a blood royal compared to somebody who married in. Yes, I realize it's archaic, but it actually does make sense. That's how other monarchies do it, to be quite honest. So it makes sense in this particular case. That is what is enacted. And we could see further letters of patent. One I've always suggested is that they changed the rules regarding titles to be that you must be raised and educated in the UK to have royal titles. That is how it's written in Sweden, and I think that's a great route to go down. I think that's something Charles should strongly consider, because that way Archie and Lily are out. And they should be out. They're not being raised in the UK. They have no sense of UK culture. They're Americans. They're Californians. They have no connection to the UK. And that has been Harry and Meghan's decision. And to prevent further catastrophes in the future, the monarchy, whether it's Charles or William, but it should be Charles. This is the legacy he can lead, must make it abundantly, appallingly clear what is required from you as a royal. And if you don't fulfill it, if you decide you want to leave, if you break the cardinal rules of X, Y, and Z, you are gone. There is no leeway. There is, if you break rule number 6, 7, and 10 or something of 10 rules, well, you're 3 strikes, you're out. Just use a baseball analogy there. 3 strikes, you are out. And that's how it should be done. This is a great move. I don't think it totally goes far enough, but I think the royal family is realizing you can't let things fester. You can't just hope it goes away. You have to be able to react. And you have to be sometimes proactive, not simply reactive. So guys, let me know what you think of this video and this latest news. Thank you so much for watching. Check out Dan's live stream. I will link it down below, and I shall speak to you again very soon. Bye.